Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. We needless to say, have a reputation to protect for the worst produced show on the internet, but we were real off our perch today. Just before we went on the air, I saw a text that had been sent a little earlier by our friend Merlin, who's a regular in the comments section, telling me that Stratosphere Lounge regular Mr. Subtle, also known as Brian Yoder, has passed away from heart failure. I knew him very well. Well, for as well as you can know somebody online. He was in Pasadena. I had scheduled for him to come by the office so that we could chat here at the studio and finally get a chance to shake hands and do all of that stuff. And then the whole world turned upside down, and I didn't get a chance to do that. He was just a super kind and fun guy, and the thing I remember most about him was that he was a constant late night companion in Star Citizen when I was flying around in Star Citizen. Usually, well, sometimes anyway, because of the work schedule, I wouldn't get a chance to log on until midnight, and sometimes it didn't have to be in early the next day. I would end up flying around the Star Citizen world until 2 or 3 in the morning sometimes. And he was one of those people that was always there. He was just a really kind, fun guy, and I knew him obviously as Brian Yoder as well in the comment section. It was heart failure and just, it's just 59 years old. It's you get to get to pick your family, but you do get to pick your friends, and my friends are online friends, and I just, really deeply regret the fact that I hadn't just made the time to see him. You never really know when these things are going to happen, obviously, and I deeply regret not having had the opportunity to meet him face to face as we had planned. I suppose the best way you can remember our friend Mr. Subtle, Brian Yoder, is to think about this and think about the situation I find myself in. I don't certainly for an instant don't want to compare myself to the grief of the family fields by any means, and I certainly don't want anybody to even think I'm going there. But the reason that I think you might want to think about this is, you just don't know. And if you have a chance to meet somebody or see somebody and you decide, well, maybe I'll just get to that later, maybe this will help us remember that we live 59. Oh, I'm sorry, there's a comment in the comment section, sorry. I hope that this will at least motivate us to make those connections and to do all those things. He was just a really good-natured, fun guy, and he was like one or two people that I've ever known in my entire life that I never heard angry. Really, it was just one of I know that your online personality can often be different than your real one. I'm a living example of that. But with that said, he just was he was a sweet man and a smart man and a generous man. And Stout Cat says let's all raise a glass to Brian, and well, Brian, I miss you already, and we're sorry that you had to fly west. And if we go, each one of us individually go where good people go, then we'll see you again. And The one thing you can rest assured about is Nancy Pelosi isn't going to be bothering you anymore because she's not going anywhere near where you are. Anyway, I deeply, deeply, deeply regret not having a chance to have had him come in here. Deeply regret it. Don't let that happen to you, folks. Don't. Yeah. To absent friends and good people and good men. God knows we need good men and women these days more than ever. And I know he's going to leave a big hole here in the Stratosphere Lounge, and I know he's going to leave a very, very big hole in the Aurora Republican, the Star Citizen universe. And my sincere condolences to everybody in his family, and we're all really shook up about it, and I was just getting the news and looking at the text, and I realized I deleted the introduction file. I deleted everything and just kind of stunned. Anyway, yeah. Well, we'll see you, pal. I'm sure we will see you, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to meet someday. And I guess it's time to do the rest of the show. You know, I suppose one other thing that probably should be said at a time like this, and that is for virtually everybody that lived on this planet. I mean, and who live on this planet today. 59 is inconceivably long and full life. I'm not trying to justify it. I'm not trying to minimize it by any means. I'm just saying that it's an indication of just how astonishing life in America is, despite all of this turmoil and all of this stress and all of this genuine fear and all the rest of it. It's just probably also something good to just sit down and take a moment to be thankful for all the men and women that gave our lives for us to live in a society where somebody dying at 59 is a half-lived life. No, I like that very much. John Pershing says, we honor the memory by carrying on the fight. Amen to that, John. Yeah. Brian's going to be harder without you. But we're not gonna quit. So anyway, that's just terrible. If I get more details, I'll share them with you. I also have one thing here. It's in lieu of flowers. Donations can be made to the Brian Yoder Memorial Scholarship, and the URL is one word. It's artrenewal.org. So that's ARTRENEWAL.org. And I will put a link to that on the Stratosphere Lounge page, and I will go over there and make a donation as soon as this show is over. You know, one of the things that I've been, well, that's striking. When that looks at the blue shirt and does its auto color balance, that I can't seem to fix. In any event, one of the things that's really striking is just because of the science fiction stuff that I'm doing, I spent a lot of time reading like real science books, specifically about xenobiology or astrobiology. And the more you read about it, the more you realize just how astonishingly unlikely life is. Any kind of life, fungal life, algae. It's a practical miracle just to get that. And when you look at the number of things that had to happen in order to have a species that had the technological capability to form friendships without being face to face, you realize that it is, in a universe this size, we can't be the only ones, but it's not what we used to think. It's not what we used to think. In terms of, hey, if it's warm enough, then great. It's an exceedingly rare thing, and I only say that to say this: just the chance to experience life at all, just the chance to be alive, is something we should all really give thanks for. You look at the Andromeda galaxy just as one example of the hundreds of billions of galaxies out there. And you look at the size of this thing; it's bigger than the Milky Way, and you just think, my God, it's so big and we're so small. Well, we're alive and it's dead. It's just dead, and we're not. And so any time on this earth is amazing. And Shelby says the chance of any one of us being born, I guess, due to genetic combinations, that's starting with life on Earth. It doesn't deal with the unlikelihood of that in its own place. That's 1 in 400 quadrillion for various genes to come together and create one unique individual. And he certainly was a unique individual, and so are every one of you. And so that's something we might be a little grateful for, too. It might be nice just to be grateful to be alive for any length of time. And God, do we need good people these days? But that's that. Okay, Brian. We'll keep you in our thoughts, and we'll certainly keep your family in our prayers, and send all the goodwill their way that we possibly can. And needless to say, if any of you might be watching this, or any of you can get word to somebody, get word to the family if there's anything that I can do. And I speak for the rest of the lounge here. If there's anything that we can do, please don't hesitate to let me know. And anything we can do, we'll do. All right, I'm gonna go pretty quickly to the questions here tonight. We didn't get much questions in last night, and I've been a busy boy. I have to say, just in passing, that these shows have been really fun, and I think we're getting better at them every day. These morning shows and Moving Back to America shows. I always go home thinking I haven't got the faintest idea what I'll talk about tomorrow, and I usually wake up that way as well. It usually comes to me on the drive to work. But they've just been really fun, and I'm obviously still a little dizzy over this. But in any event, the shows have been they've been fun to do, and I'm very proud of them. And to all the new members who have joined, and all of you who made a one-time donation, I am not just grateful, as any decent person would be genuinely grateful for somebody's help, and I'm also not only grateful for the opportunity to expand what we do here as well as just keep it going. I'm just grateful on a personal level, because watching that incredible movement has given me a lot of strength to go on and start talking about some of the things that I talked about in the show this morning. Here it is again. Don't show the blue. It's just it's blue is there we go. It's just incredibly encouraging, and for the first time, I really feel like I'm firing on all cylinders. And welcome to our new members that are watching live here, DeToy, and anyone else, and the Stratosphere Lounge. We got right at this very second, we have 81 people watching live. Welcome and hi to all of you. And if you're new, you missed a real person there. And the shows are getting like 10,000 views on YouTube, which is amazing considering the low density of the content. Let's just put it that way. So anyway, DTO the third, got it. Well, welcome. So we'll get into the questions, but I really feel like now we're really starting to fire on all cylinders, And I think we're going to be I know we're going to be bringing in some extra programming, and I have somebody in mind. And I'm not going to reveal any names until I get that sorted out, but there's something I would like to do, and it's some stuff I'd like to do with Scott as well. I've missed working with him. That's great too, so we'll see. So I think I'm just going to go right to the questions, and maybe we'll do an hour, and then I'll call it a night. Yeah, and I want to do this new show one way or another. I think is going to be not so much about I personally would like to do a show about virtue. That's what I would like to do. I'd like to do a show, a weekly show, where we talk about virtue and what it means, and how you actually achieve it in this strange world of ours. So anyway, we'll go ahead and just get on with the show and do some questions. I'll go home. It's been a bunch of early mornings, and I'm really kind of tired, but I'm also extremely grateful and very, very encouraged. So thank you for all of that. Oh, and by the way, those of you who've expressed some concerns about my throat cracking, my voice cracking, I got some notes from people, and they said, you really should get this looked at. It could be serious. Do it. So I did it. Did it yesterday. And went to an ENT, and I sat there and told him, I don't know if I strained my voice, or I did a lot of overly enthusiastic warm-ups when I was recording the America's Forgotten Heroes back in the end of October, early November. And anyway, I suspect I might have damaged it. In any event, I went in there, and I thought I would get the ENT, and the ENT would give me a referral for the endoscopy. I had one done, and it was general anesthesia kind of thing. But he said, no, we'll just do it right here in the office. And he brought out this device with a long tube and a pretty thick tube too. And I thought, oh, that's going to be fun. And then I found out that tube was actually the power cord for the actual endoscope is much, much thinner. And in order to look down my throat, they inserted this tube up my nose, which I thought was kind of a roundabout way of doing things. But they know what they're doing. I guess it's got to do with the gag reaction and all of that. So they numbed me up a little bit. They took 2 pieces of tissues, dipped them in some kind of Novocaine, and just kept screwing them into each nostril until they hit the eyeballs, and then they stopped, and then sat there for 10 or 15 minutes, and I just kind of braced myself, and just there's nothing you can do about it, so just don't cry. And sure enough, it was uncomfortable, and there were just a couple of moments when it was like a really sharp kind of ow. But actually, it was done in 40 seconds, and it wasn't uncomfortable at all. Nothing like as nasty as those first-generation COVID tests. And you'll be pleased to know that after they went up my nose and looked down my throat, and I said, "Ee," a lot, he said, no, I've got a real good look at them, and your vocal cords are fine. There's no polyps, no growths, nothing like that. You're using your upper vocal cords look a little strained. I didn't know you had 2 sets of vocal cords. I really didn't. He said, you're using your upper. I said, is that what you use when you go to falsetto? And apparently that is. So instead of having to have surgery, or much worse than surgery, a diagnosis that says you're going to have to be quiet and not say anything for a month, which was certainly the diagnosis Natasha was hoping for. No, I actually got a medical, here it goes, got a medical referral to a speech pathologist who's going to teach me how to use my throat, and in a perfect world will teach me how to come out of this high-pitched voice that I've always had and come down here somewhere where my natural voice really is. We'll see. Anyway, I'm fine, so thank you for all the concern. So let's do some questions. Hey, look at that. It's Eric Blake. Hey, live long and prosper, Bill. Thank you, Eric, and to you as well. Okay, so you're noting you have no intention of using faster than light travel in your science fiction projects. Kind of begs the question, are you going to have interstellar, not just interplanetary powers and governments be a thing? If so, the question becomes, how could such governments function for any length of time without the ability to travel faster than light? Hooray, a science fiction question, because I was really praying, really just praying that we'd have some questions about the election, the impeachment, and COVID, because those are the things that I really itching to talk about. Bless you, Eric. So yeah, let's just go ahead and have some fun tonight, because God knows we need it. Um, uh, the um, that's an interesting question, and it requires a well thought out lesson. How are you going to have are you going to have interstellar governments? Yes. How are these governments going to function when the communication times at the minimum is 5 years one way? Well, that's a bit of a question, isn't it? Um, that's a bit of a question, and I'm not entirely sure I'm going to do that, but I am going to do it because, first of all, as I've mentioned in several different shows, I'm not going to get into this again. Not now, anyway. I think the case for faster than light travel is exceedingly unlikely, as much as I wish it weren't. I mean, I really, really, really wish it weren't, but I just decided to go with slower than light travel because I think it's exceedingly unlikely. Uh, and even things like, the Albuquerque Drive or whatever it's called, it's like, yeah, I can expand space uh, uh, behind it and compress it in front of it, and it just, the whole warp moves. True, but it takes more energy than is generated in the galaxy in order to achieve that effect, assuming you could even control it. So anyway, I'm just going to go with this. It's not generation ships. It's none of that stuff. I'm thinking, commercial ship gets to 50%, 40, 50% of the speed of light, and then a military ship might get to 70, maybe even 80. It's just a 1G burn for 4 months or something like that, and then it just shuts off and it cruises. So I'm figuring from here to Alpha Centauri, if you're going with UPS ground, it's probably pretty close to a 10-year trip, something like that. Yeah, Aesop says the speed of sound was once impossible, but that was an engineering problem. There was no physical reason why something couldn't go supersonic. In fact, people knew things that could go supersonic, like the crack of a whip is when the tip of a whip goes supersonic. So this is not, there goes the jaundice again. I got to just stop moving this chair. This isn't an engineering problem. This is not only a physics problem, it's the physics problem. It is everywhere, and it is not. It's built into everything. So anyway, whether it's going to come or not, it's very likely not going to happen in my lifetime. So I'm going to go with this because it's different, and ultimately that's why I want to do it, because it's different. And I like doing things that haven't been done before. And I think there's an incredible drought of smart science fiction. It's the kind of things where, people. I'm going to get this color back if it kills me. There we go. Just focus on my incredibly pale skin. It's called white balancing. Um, and I want to move into that space, if you'll pardon the expression. So so the question is, how do you maintain a government like that? And I got to tell you, the only thing I think you can do, Eric, is you can go back and look in history, because instantaneous worldwide communication is new. It's very new. Virtually every government in the history of the world had to deal with delays in communications that would be months, in some cases even years. And so it's just a question of figuring it out. Now, in Traveler, which is a science fiction role-playing game, which I like very much, Traveler solved the problem, and Traveler had relatively quick interstellar travel, a week to go, a parsec or two. But that, given the size of the Imperium in Traveler, you're still talking about weeks or months to get from one end of the Imperium to the other. And what they did was they basically brought back a feudal system where you, honest to goodness, have a emperor, and he has archdukes that run the subsector, and then there's a duke on each planet, and he controls the planet, and then there's earls and all the rest of it, and all these different things and so on. And if it's consistent, it actually works pretty well. The Star Citizen universe is spectacularly poor in this regard. The lore is the worst part of that by far. They've got an Imperium and all the rest, but in Traveler it was really well thought out. It's astonishingly well thought out in Dune, even though that's pretty much got more or less instantaneous travel. But to be honest with you, feudalism just doesn't feel right to me. It just, you could make the case that the conditions are reverting to that, but that just doesn't feel right. The centralized government I'm still working on is I pretty much rejected kind of an imperium just because I'm so sick of it, and I just don't. And I thought I'd given a lot of thought earlier, like 30 years earlier, to the idea of what corporate governance would look like with mega corporations, and I like that a lot better. And the only problem I have with that is I don't want to demonize corporations. I'm just so sick of it. I'm so tired of it. It's so old and it's so unfair. Uh, and so I kind of find myself thinking, well, I mean, really, if you're going to call this series the colonies, and you've got to have something to rebel against. If you're going to tell the story of the American experiment, including the revolution, then you got to have, and if the good guys in your story are the Americans, then you've got to have something to rebel against. And so I thought to myself, well, what's the most repulsive kind of government I could think of? And I realized California is pretty close. Um, so I really think that this centralized government, I would imperium or this. I actually kind of think it should be something incredibly banal or banal. I guess I don't know how you pronounce it. I think it should be called the Terran Administrative Zone, like something like that. TAS, just like it's like a district, it's like a bureau. Um, the Expanse obviously has the United Nations, but I just find that to be ridiculous. I think the United Nations was discredited 30 years ago. Um, and so basically, you can tell a story where you've got this sort of a conglomerate of Western type nations, and China's off doing its own thing as usual, and there are other sort of mega alliances. And then I think the cause that starts the whole story rolling is when these guys who are in the United States Space Force, guys that are in the military here, that back home on Earth, they've decided to vote away the United States. That entire military thing is going to be folded into the Earth Administrative Zone, and that the flag is going to change and all the rest of it. And this is a big step forward and a step, incredible thing for humanity and so on and so forth. And they don't want to do it, and so that's the foundation of it. I'm not going to waste a whole lot more time on this. And I don't mean to say waste, Eric. It's just one thing I've heard and found, and I believe is that it's pretty inside baseball and kind of a narrow topic. And I think we probably should save those for the science fiction night so that other people can just plain tune out. But thanks for the question anyway. It's good to get off of all the rest of this nightmare for a few minutes. Cheryl Toomey. Is the country that the founders wished to give us obsolete? Has the idea of a republic been overshadowed by a more contemporary idea of utopian socialism? What's wrong with everyone having an equal piece of the pie? Is the reason we are struggling because we are in fact wrong? That is a very, very profound question. And believe it or not, it's a question that I start all my assumptions from, especially since November 3rd. It's a much better expressed version of the what if I'm wrong. And I'm going to be doing a speaking event in January. And I think, we're talking to a bunch of Tea Party patriots. And I think if you're really going to lay out what we're going to do, then I think the first option is, okay, if we're going to look at all of our options, let's talk about surrender. I mean, you can't look at it fairly if you're not willing to talk about surrender. Let's talk about surrender as an option. I'm leaning back now so that I don't kind of prop myself up and give myself the big jaundice look. So let me tilt this down a little bit because of the guy who's running this show technically is just a complete moron. So what if you were basically to surrender the principles? What's the bad? What's the downside? Let's say that the progressives get their way. What's the downside? You have all of these restrictions on free speech. Okay. If they were to enforce everything that they wanted, if you were to take the social justice warrior wing of the Democratic Party, give them absolute power, don't fight them at all, and have them put into place everything they want to right now, that would be one world, and there would be a lot about that world not to like. But the reason that we should not surrender and keep fighting them is not because of what the world would look like if they had absolute power tomorrow. That would still be miserable. The much bigger issue is what would the world look like in 20 years. And then 50 years. What would the world look like if uh, if all of this stuff simply gets folded into this giant, just this giant toxic pot full of government, bureaucracy, and mega corporations, big business, mercantilism? What what happens there? If you, needless to say, I've been talking about this with my wife. We've been talking about a lot of things since the election, and we've talked about what is it about Sweden that's so awful? And there's nothing awful about Sweden. And I was in Norway, and I thought Norway. It is at 720 feet, Dave. I think should be. Some people are having some problems with Twitch, and we think about moving there anyway, off of there. But the question, I've seen Norway, and Norway wasn't. Norway was a long, 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 long way from a living hell. Norway was lovely, lovely, clean, quiet, spotless, absolutely, absolutely great. People were in tremendous physical shape. You could do a lot worse than Norway. I loved Norway. I thought Norway was incredible and great. But when you start thinking about things like that, there are a couple things that come to mind. First of all, the there's no way we can become Norway, because in Norway everybody contributes to the system, and they work hard. And the reason we're in this kind of trouble is because of the politics and the politicians, and they have people of integrity in government. That's I had dinner with I think it was a former ambassador or a assistant ambassador. Lovely, lovely people. Take their job seriously and do a good job. Save money. Norway is an example of socialism. And by the way, I said socialism in Norway, and they nearly took my head off. It was the only time I saw them angry with this American rube wandering around their beautiful country. The only time I ever saw them actually genuinely ticked off was when I said this is a socialist country and talked about it as if it was, and they just had a cow about that. But nevertheless, it is certainly more socialist than ours is, and it's actually a very nice place. But first of all, America can't turn into Norway because of the rampant fraud and all of that. We are far too diverse and far too cantankerous a people to ever really live that quietly and that peacefully. Norway gets away with it, and as Woody Fool points out live, Shelby AC says Japan also very culturally homogenous societies. So you can't get there from here, number one, and number two. And this is really the big point. This is what really worries me if these people get their way. Since you can't get to Norway or Sweden from here, you can't get this country to that place. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's not a question of politically, it's just physically impossible to take this population and get them there. So it means it's going to be something else. And that means it's going to be something less than Norway and Sweden, and probably somewhat better than Venezuela and the Soviet Union. But the thing that really worries me is not about what would happen tomorrow. It's what happens 20 years from now. And what I mean by that is, when I was having this conversation with Natasha about, Sweden's not a bad place at all. It isn't, and neither is Norway. But I look around my house and I see nothing that comes from Norway or Sweden, with all due respect to Norway anyway. I don't have anything in my house that was built or designed in Norway. And I don't know of any product that I own in the house or in the studio or anything that comes from Norway. We used to have some IKEA furniture, but once you've had IKEA furniture, that kind of discourages you from getting more IKEA furniture. And I liked ABBA an awful lot when I was there. But aside from that, it's not exactly groundbreaking technology. And when you really start counting, what you find is just about everything that you got was almost always invented in America, and then it was manufactured in China or Korea or Japan. And really, in terms of the environment that we live in here, obviously some things in here are probably manufactured in Vietnam now or whatever the case may be, but essentially, if you take America away, Well, let's just take a very specific example. Um, I don't know where the rest of the world is in terms of their research on these vaccines for COVID-19, but I do know that the United States in 8 months, 9 months produced two different vaccines that had a 98% um, uh, efficacy rate, and China said they had one that was maybe 80%, and they were working on theirs a whole lot longer. It's China makes our stuff, and all of this occurs because not because of like some. It occurs because, as I've said before, the great miracle of America is that it's easy to start and it's easy to fail. And that is what makes this country so successful: is the ease in starting and the relative um, insulation from failing. Nothing happens unless you fail your way into success, and I'm the living example of that, and so is this company. Um, so all of these startups that are the real heart of American ingenuity, I don't see them happening anywhere else. And if they make it impossible for them to happen here, then where do they happen? You're not going to get, at least for the foreseeable future, um, you're not going to get Chinese, two Chinese guys getting together in their garage and building a home computer. I'm not saying that they're not smart enough. I am saying that generally speaking, this kind of new ideas, this brand new kind of idea, is almost always a result of the cultural differences of people with different perspectives and arguing and discussion and freedom of discussion and all of that stuff. And it's kind of this reactor, and all these ideas come out of it, and most of them are junk, but some of them are not. And even if you could find a couple of Chinese entrepreneur types who had the ability to think outside the box enough to come up with something really, really revolutionary. And the whole thing about Chinese culture is it's designed to fit in the box. That's what the CCP does to them. But and that's what a homogenous culture generally does too. And even if you were to get around that, and you had a Steve Wozniak and a Steve Jobs in China right now, how could they take it from an idea to what at least used to be the richest corporation in the world? How could you do it? These guys can't start a business. They can't go out and borrow capital, and anything that they make is going to be, at the best case scenario, um, monitored by the state. Taken over. Once they start to succeed, the state's going to get involved. The Chinese state's going to get involved in all of it, and then it's just killed. And I don't know how else to explain why a country that has four times our population just a few months ago finally put a rover on the moon when this group of malcontents walked on it half a century ago. And 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 this goes to a deeper issue, actually, Cheryl, and that is, right now we're facing opposition from people who take every short-term advantage. They've got all the media, they've got all of this. They cheat, doesn't bother them, all of that. Um, and so they have the advantages of cheaters. They have short-term advantages, but we have long-term advantages. And if you're a cheater, if you're the kind of person designed or inclined to steal an election or take a payoff or whatever, that means you're a fundamentally dishonest person, and that gives you some short-term bonuses. You get to cheat. That's good. But the long-term disadvantage is, if you're constantly cheating, even the people you're cheating with know that you're a cheater, and you know that they're cheaters. There's nothing like the foundation of trust and respect, and just trust is a really good word. That's the foundation. It's like the concrete structure of all of the entrepreneurism. When I say trust, I mean fundamental things, just basic things. Like if I go down to a bank and I hand a guy, $1,000, I'd like to believe that if I decided to go down there the next day and ask for it back, he'd give it to me. Things like that are pretty uncommon in the world. And so when you take a look at the total of these things, you kind of come down to this. If they do turn this country into a socialist country, it is not going to be Scandinavia. And I think Scandinavia is the best case scenario, and nothing happens in Scandinavia. With tremendous love out to my Norwegian friends, and I deeply admire Norwegians, and I loved that country. I had a wonderful time, and they took very good care of me. I don't want to badmouth them at all. But nothing happens there. I walked down the streets of Oslo in the middle of the afternoon on a business day, and it looked kind of like a museum. Sam Shepard, he said this when I was in college, so it's certainly more than 40, 43, 40 years ago, something like that. And I was in the theater department. Sam Shepard is a great playwright. He's a very good playwright. And Sam Shepard said that when he first went to New York as a young man, he went there from, I don't know where he's from, Texas, somewhere in the South. I think it might have been Texas. So young Sam Shepard goes to New York for the first time, gets off a bus, and he's got his cowboy boots on, and he's walking down the streets of New York, and he'd just done some mescaline, I think he said. And he said he was walking down the streets of New York, just got off the bus, and he looked down at his feet. He said he could see sparks coming off of his heels. And I never forgot that description, because there are times when at least what New York used to be gives you that sense. Like whenever you walk, that same Shepard, the guy who played Chuck Yeager in The Right Stuff, and the guy who played the general in Black Hawk Down. He said, you look down and see sparks coming off your heels. And I've been many times I've been in New York when I've had that sense, this, despite all of it, this is kind of the spindle of the world. And I don't see that in Dubai. Dubai looks like Dubai is the fantasy of what I would love an American city to look like. It's just stunning. And I may be wrong about this, but frankly, every time I look at Dubai, I look at the buildings, I think, my God, this is so beautiful. Why aren't we doing this in America? Why are all these wonderful buildings out there in this place that sucks, where there's nothing but sand? Who wants to live in Dubai? Makes you wonder why we don't build those buildings anymore. Like I said before, I think there should be a constitutional amendment that basically says that the United States of America must have the tallest building in the world at any given time. Because that's it. And frankly, America at the height of its powers, you wouldn't have had to make a constitutional amendment for that, which I say facetiously, because right up until the 70s, and probably even into the 80s, the idea that another country would have the tallest building in the world would be inconceivable and intolerable to American businessmen. And speaking of New York, by the way, just so I can get this out of my system, there is that one building that is south of Central Park, and it's I think it's a little north of the Empire State Building, but it is it is a very narrow square that goes straight up. It's one of the tallest buildings in the world. It's very nearly as tall as the Empire State Building. Maybe it's even taller. It's a thin square pencil right in the middle of downtown there, and it is hideous. It is just horrific what that thing does to the New York skyline. It's just awful. Is it? No, not the Chrysler Building. No. The Chrysler Building is the most beautiful building ever built by human hands. The Chrysler Building is magnificent. This is a brand new building, and it looks like they only had like one tiny little lot, and they just went straight up. And it's just a very, very long extruded cube, and it's Steinway Tower. Okay, it's horrible. Anyway, so all of that just to say, this is the reactor that powers the world. It powers the world in terms of new inventions and new medicines and all of this. And if they plow this under, then that will go and nothing will replace it. We are already living in a world where numerous tests have determined that this is really the first generation that is stupider than its parents. And that ought to alarm the living daylights out of us. It's probably going to be the first generation to not enjoy the same kind of height increases. Every generation up until now has been smarter than their parents and taller than their parents as a general rule. And it's not only flatlined, it's actually declining. And on average, everybody in the comment section, not my kids, okay, I believe you, I do. But nevertheless, that should scare the living daylights out of you. And I think that Trevor says, but they will be wider. Yes, their volume will be greater. They won't be as tall, but they'll be wider, and probably their density would be considerably higher. I take that back. I think muscle's probably denser than fat. In any event, if it goes, it's gone, and I don't see how to restart it either. So we can't let it go, and we won't. So that's that. I'll do a couple more. And I know I haven't been able to do many questions lately, but I have been working like a fiend. Susan Speakman. Should the folks at My Pillow donate pillows and bedding to the National Guard troops stationed at the Capitol? If President Trump asked Mike Lindell, I bet he'd make it happen. This picture of Nancy Pelosi walking out and thanking the troops protecting the Capitol, that photo to me is I think that particular picture and that photo opportunity, that publicity stunt, is the most infuriating single thing that I've seen since I've been doing this. There's something about that absolutely makes my blood boil, just boil. That she comes out to say thank you for protecting us against this insane president. As the Speaker of the House, I just wanted to come out and thank every one of you personally for all that you've done. Go to hell. Go to hell. Take the express train. Pelosi's one of the worst people that ever lived. She's horrible. And only because Hillary Clinton has left the scene is there even... There's nothing to compare her to. She's just a horrible person, and that was a horrible thing to do. And this second impeachment thing was another, just a tear the country up. It's like there's nobody voted for Donald Trump. It's like she thinks she can just send this FU memo to him, and it just goes directly to him. She doesn't realize that what she's doing is dragging 100 million people who are plenty angry already, plenty angry. She's just making them angrier, and that's exactly what she's doing, and she doesn't care. I personally think that I really do think that she's doing it to provoke another conservative outburst that they can use. I really think that she's trolling us. But I don't know what's going to happen to that person, but I know one thing. She's not going to the same place Brian Yoder's going, and I'm doing my level best to make sure I don't end up where she does. She is a horrible, horrible, horrible person. And she's stupid. And even when she's crafty, there's no question about that. But she is just absolutely... And she's senile. You're going to have Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi. They're going to be in the spotlight now. And Donald Trump's not going to be the glue to hold the left together. And they're going to just stand there and they're going to mumble at each other and ask him where the peas are. And she'll say, I thought I sent you out for, milk. And the guy will say, who are you? Appalling. No, so we're not wrong. Freedom of speech is freedom of speech is freedom of thought. Freedom of thought is what is the reactor that generates everything in this world. All of the inventions, all of the stuff, all of the medicine, all of the music, by the way, all of the music, all of the movies, all of it. It comes from freedom of thought, and they're trying to eliminate freedom of thought by limiting freedom of speech. And that's why we can't let them do that. Susan Speakman. Oh, I'm sorry, just asked that. The National Guard thing. I see this and I just want to beat her up. I just want to beat her up. And that's the honest truth. But I don't. And I'm not calling for anybody else to either. Just so we're clear on that. Yes, I named it the Piranha Party. That was my first, my first afterburner ever was at PJTV. It was called the Piranha Party, political party designed to go into Washington and retire laws, reduce the amount of legislation, just eat it up, spit it out. That idea is worth reviving as well. I may even talk about that tomorrow, supposedly. We'll see. I'm trying not to do doubles here. But I will take this one. How much of last week's upheaval was false flag operations, do you think? When I did that American Army video, I knew that there were people from Antifa posing as Trump supporters. And I also knew that, is it Andy Ning? I can't remember his name. But he was there, and I trust him. I trust him from his reporting in Portland. And he said, this is not just Antifa. This is not, not that. Nego, yeah. He came out with that early, and he said, this is not, if you think this is all Antifa, it's not. And I trust him. He knows Antifa better than anybody I've read or seen. And then as time has gone by since I did that episode, the evidence, it's Andy No, thank you. the evidence gets stronger and stronger every day. Now, I don't know what truth there is to this business about busloads of guys being brought in. I saw a report earlier today that said the FBI knew that these people were coming, didn't do anything. I've seen video that seems to indicate that the DC police basically opened the doors and let them in. I haven't been able to track down any of this stuff, but there's no question that that there's that they are doing their very best to incite this kind of thing. They're looking for. They know they've got a tinderbox, and unlike anybody who's responsible in a situation when emotions are running very, very high, which is why Nancy Pelosi needs to be impeached, removed from office, and put in jail. When emotions are running this high, if you care about the country, what you should try to do is cool things down. And that's not what they're doing. They're throwing gasoline on the fire. And I think the second impeachment was designed to make conservatives even more outraged, so that the people that are on the far end of that bell curve are all they need is just a spark, and off they go. And it's and I caught a lot of flack for that episode, but I needed to come out and say this is not only do I not approve of it, I think it's just really bad. I think this hurts us very, very much. But that doesn't mean I don't understand it. And that leads me to another subject, and that is a lot of people, I don't know how many, but certainly I've heard it quite a bit in the last several weeks. And I saw people in when Beck did his Blackboard thing about the difference between good and evil, and condemned this whole thing at the Capitol. I looked at the comment section, and virtually all of them were Beck jumped the shark years ago, and Beck's just one of them now, and Beck's a swamp monster, and Beck, he's just he's a cuck, and he's this and that, and he's part. It's like that's just plain. That's just nutty. I understand, and I'm not even saying I wouldn't have done it myself, to be perfectly honest with you. That's how angry I am. But, I had a chance, and I may end up incorporating this somewhere. I wanted to do this, and I didn't get it into that American Army thing. I really wanted to. It was a good analogy. And that's just this. One of the things that in the Pacific War, the Japanese made life a lot easier for us with their bonsai charges. And that's what this felt like. It felt like something that was a release of emotion that was overwhelming. And a bonsai charge, you would throughout almost all of the island hopping in the Pacific, you would have the Japanese realize these Marines are on the island and they're not going to be able to throw them out. It started in Guadalcanal. It was horrific, and it's just absolutely terrifying to the guys on the ground. I'm not trying to minimize that. But basically, if all of these defenders are going to get together, have some sake, come charging down the hill screaming bonsai with a bayonet and a guy with a sword in the front, and they're going into Marine machine gun positions, that's just the easiest possible way to kill 1,000 Japanese. If each one of those guys decided to stand or climb a tree and become a sniper, that's a much harder thing to deal with. And so the Japanese did this for their sense of honor, and they couldn't handle the shame of it and all the rest of it. But when they did these bonsai charges, it was a gift to America. It may not have been much of a gift to the guys who had to stand in front of one, but overall, it was a gift. And so what do you say when you watch somebody walk into an ambush? I think the only thing you can say is don't do that. And I think that if you don't say that, despite the heat or whatever criticism you get from it, then you're not much of a leader. If you just say, I don't want to criticize this operation, it was a catastrophe. I'm not saying it wasn't justified. That's why it was a catastrophe. They're giving us as much justification as they possibly can for us to go and do these kind of things, and that will allow them to win the middle of the American people to the things they really want to do, which is take all the guns away and put an end to that particular threat. But in any event, we can't afford bonsai charges. We can't. It's a waste of troops, and it's plays to the enemy, and we can't play to the enemy. We can't. Now, did anything good come out of that? I don't know. Certainly, tactically, it was a catastrophe in terms of the whole credibility of the election fraud things and all the rest of it. And I didn't like seeing the House of Representatives trashed and all the rest of it. But some people have said it got their attention, and maybe it did. But I'll tell you, when the enemy owns all of the media and they are crafting the narrative, then all they're doing is looking for anything that exists in the real world that they can hang their narrative on. And we all say, well, here's what they said in Wisconsin. Here's what they said a week ago. Here's what they said a month ago. Here's what they said all during BLM. Here's a guy who said we should like Molotov cocktails if Trump is reelected. And everybody says it's so hypocritical. It is so hypocritical. It's enough to make you genuinely insane. Lose your mind crazy. Tear your hair, rend your clothes crazy. The hypocrisy of it. But it's not hypocrisy in the way that we understand it. For us, hypocrisy is acting in a way different than we tell people, and we're too stupid to realize that we're violating our own standards of ethics. This is much more like trolling than hypocrisy. They know it drives us crazy. They know it. I am completely convinced that the main purpose of all of this big tech data mining is to be able to gauge the reactiveness of the population. I really think that's the ultimate goal for them in this sort of intermediate stage. Is they need to know how much we'll take. And I think they have a very, very precise idea of how much we'll take. And I think they're constantly monitoring how much we'll take by looking at our emails and code words and all the rest of it and so on. So if you've got an enemy that's basically in orbit looking down on you and knows exactly what you're likely to do, and if it is going to put a kill box someplace, and it knows how to drive you to that kill box, then your choice is either you walk in there and you do what you want to do, which feels good, or you basically, on some level, use your intellect to say, this is what they want, I'm not going to do it. A better example of this, actually, is this idea that this is a very old tactic because it's so effective. The enemy will capture a couple of your guys, and then they'll torture them just out of sight. Really torture them, and you'll hear their screams, and you'll hear them begging for help. And if they get a hold of some of your women, it's even more unbearable. And now you're in this situation where you're in a trench, and you got a rifle, and you've got a bunch of other guys, and you hear your best friend being tortured to death out there, and he's screaming, and he's begging for help, and you have to ask yourself, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do? What you want to do, what's almost irresistible, is the desire to go out there and try and save them. Even if you get killed, at least you got to get rid of this aggression. And that's entirely what they're counting on. That's why they did it. That's why they're torturing. They're begging, they're praying that you're going to take the bait. And this is when, the Savage Curtain, well done. Omega Yang 802, it's a new name, the Savage Curtain. Multiple points, you win this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge. I'll get to that in a second. So what do you do? What do you do if you're a member of the troops? You're just a regular soldier, and that's your best friend. And what do you do if you're a commander? Well, I think the answer is pretty obvious, right? The answer is, this is what war is. It's awful. It's unbearable, but we have to bear it, because that person that's being tortured is not going to survive. We're not going to be able to rescue them. They're going to die anyway. And they're going to die painfully anyway. And now the question is, are we going to die with them, or are we going to have some control and discipline so we can win this battle and then murder every single one of those bastards? That's how you sell it, I think. It's the only way to do it. Guys, we're going to have to just sit here and listen to this for the next 6 hours. And what I want you to do is I want you to get filled with a burning rage, and we are going to get even with them, but we're not going to do what they want us to do. We're not. So that's all you can hope for. And I think that's it. Omega Yang 802 said the Savage Curtain. That was an episode of Star Trek, original series Star Trek. And it was a memorable episode. I don't think it was a particularly good one, but just because I thought the Lincoln, even as a boy, I thought the Lincoln was pretty kind of weak. Nevertheless, it's one of those episodes where there's some alien intelligence trying to understand humanity, so they take Kirk and Abraham Lincoln and I think two other heroes. Oh, and Sarek of Vulcan and Spock, I guess. And they're up against four evil. And basically, this alien intelligence wants to know which one of these two things is stronger in humans, is good or evil. And the bad guy, oh, and Sarek, who's nonviolent Vulcan, goes over there to talk to them because that's what he does. And so they, next thing you know, you got the good guys hiding behind one styrofoam rock, and a couple yards away, there's another styrofoam rock, and you can hear, you can hear them what they want you to think is the Vulcan ambassador. I'll never forget it. It's just so badly done that you don't see him, but you hear the voice because one of the bad guys is faking. He's here, Spock. Help me, Spock. Spock. I don't even think the rocks believe that. And Kirk says, "Don't do it. It's a trap." And Spock says, "No, of course I'm not going to do it. I know they're faking it. A Vulcan would not cry out so." There you go. Vulcans will not cry out so. So that's kind of how you have to look at it. And by the way, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. They're going to keep doing this. We're being trolled and we're being provoked. We're being poked with a sharp stick. And what they're waiting for is they're waiting for us to respond. We're sitting in the back seat of the car with these brats, and they keep slapping us in the face and putting their finger on our nose, and they're not actually touching us, but they're making it to the point where we simply can't take it. And then we're going to unload a punch right in their little faces. And then they're going to say, "Ma, you hit me for no reason," and then you get punished for the retaliation. I heard Bill Barr talk about that. He wanted to. He was talking about something happening. He wanted to get into a fight or something. He said, and he remembered all the Sports Center shows that he's watched, and he realizes. And he said, the refs always throw the flag for the retaliation. They never see the original hit. They hear the hit or see the hit. Everybody's looking over there, and then the guy who got hit hits back, and he's the guy who gets ejected from the game. So you have to, I want to deal with this question. Flippin' 2 a.m. says, "I know you're right, Bill, but the argument that if you fight back, you'll be giving them what they want never sat well with me." There's two things to say about that. And I appreciate the comment because it helps me clarify, and I completely commiserate with that. The first thing I'll say is, I'm not saying that we don't fight back. I'm saying that we fight back on our terms, and we don't fight back in a way that's designed to get us annihilated without even hurting them. What they want us to do is they want us to walk into these kill boxes where they can destroy us with no losses. So I'm not saying we don't fight back. I'm saying we have to have the discipline to fight back in a way where we can win and not do what they're poking us to do, because I don't think that's exactly the way to go. I am not, and look, and I did that the morning after it happened, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to reflect on it and all the rest of it. I would have done it differently if I did it now. But basically, we have to concentrate on beating these people, and we have to keep in mind that we are so badly outnumbered in so many ways, and they've dialed us in the same way that the Japanese understood that. A Japanese commander, if it had gone the other way around and Marines were torching a Japanese soldier to get the Japanese to come out and he would have laughed. A Japanese soldier means nothing to them. It's a thing. It's a unit. They understand our psychology. And so when they torture one of our soldiers, they know the chance of us going in there and doing exactly what they want is very high. And if it's a woman being tortured, as I said, it becomes almost impossible. It is almost physically impossible. Then you're stuck with it, right? Right, everybody? You're stuck with it. What do? Do you do something that feels good for a few moments and get killed, get everybody else killed? The guy's being tortured is going to be killed, and then they win. Or do you just grit your teeth and use your head and understand that first of all, there is no saving this guy, and secondly, the only way to get revenge on these swine is to maintain your discipline, don't do what they want you to do, and take the long view, and then when you finally get that revenge, you savor it. There's no other way to deal with it. You either walk into the ambush or you don't. You can't tell me that the ambush isn't there. You can only say we should walk into it or we shouldn't. And I think you don't walk into an enemy ambush. And the beauty of a really good ambush is it becomes almost impossible to not walk into that ambush. And by the way, some of the people that leveled the harshest criticism at me personally for that and for other things are saying the time for talk is over. Maybe they're right. They may be right. But what I'm interested in and what I've noticed is I don't see their plan. All the people who said, you just want to talk. You don't understand that you can't fight these people. There's never going to be another election again. The time for talk and compromise is over. Okay, maybe you're absolutely right. What's the plan? What's the plan? I'm genuinely listening. I'm not being facetious and not being flip. I'm as serious as I can be. What's the plan? And that's when I find out that these couch commandos, generally speaking, talk about we need to go in there and take our guns and okay, who's gonna lead this thing? Who's gonna organize it? And then you find out there is no plan and that it's just venting. And then I had to realize, well, if I'm going to be a part of this recovery and do something to help organize and lead people to the degree that I can, I have to grow thicker skin when it comes to darts coming from behind. I have to understand that when people make comments like that, I got to just deal with it. And it's like everybody's angry and everybody's just looking for the first thing that they can leap out at and snap at. And that's part of being a leader, is just saying, okay, that's it. You just have to let it go, Bill. They're furious and you're telling them that we're not going to do what they feel in their adrenaline and heart that they want to do. We're the guy that says no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to go rescue Jim, who we all love. We're going to stay here. And then, of course, you hate that kind of commander. That's our friend. Yeah, I know it. He's my brother. Okay, we're still staying here. I'll kill you. And I don't blame them for feeling that at all. Anyway, Richard Garcia has a question saying it was a false flag op, but I think I've covered that to the best of my ability at the moment. This just makes me smile a little bit and makes me a little bit sad. There's a meme, it's a picture of Donald Trump there, and he says, "I'm best at impeachments. No one in history has been impeached as much as me." I really liked what I opened the show with today, and that is, Pelosi, but you're just disgraceful. You could get 2 more impeachments in there before he leaves office. Absolutely. You could get at least 2 more. And if you really worked hard, you could get another 3. And that's what they've done. And I think their primary motive for doing the impeachment first time and the second time was just to put a black mark next to Trump's presidency. That's fine. Martin Archer, how's it going, Martin? Says those are badges of honor, and I agree. But what they've really done is what they do, and that is destroyed something really important. They've destroyed something really, really important. They've taken the most serious, solemn, and sad activity in American politics and turned it into they've turned it into it. That's it. That's it. They've taken the most solemn, weighty, monumental decision in American politics and turned it into a tweet. It's a tweet now. Yeah, it makes impeachment meaningless. Great. And by the way, this is one of those cases when I'm talking a clear case of fighting the way that your enemy is fighting. Go into battle honorably, and if they decide they're going to treat you and they're going to take advantage of your honor, then it's time to fight them on their level. That doesn't mean trashing the Capitol, but it does mean immediately impeach Joe Biden. And I think I know there's a congressman that's talking about doing it. Impeach him immediately. Put the motion there. It won't pass, but do it. Get it on the record. And never stop it. Just keep bringing it up all the time. Because this is how they've played the game. This is the card they've played. So now we're going to use it against them. When Harry Reid invoked what used to be called the nuclear option, which I now call the Harry Reid option, to throw away 100+ years of handshake agreement because he needed a cheap vote. Okay, well, that's how we got 3 Supreme Court justices. So you want to destroy the the system that makes this civilized and relatively friendly and relatively palatable. You want to destroy that? Okay, now it's destroyed. Now we're going to use it against you. We're gonna impeach every one thing I can tell you of right now. One thing I tell you of right this second is that every single president in American history from this point forward is going to be impeached until we flush the entire system of all of these bastards. Every single one of them is going to be impeached. They're going to be impeached on a regular basis. It's going to be something that happens like your quarterly taxes. Isn't it time for the fall impeachment proceedings? Yeah, I guess it is. So there you go. And yeah, and 10 Republicans voted for that. You know, when the shells are falling, you get a pretty accurate view of who's going to stick with you and who's not. There's a lot of people talk about sticking with, yeah, we're going to go out there and kick their asses. But when the actual shells are starting to fall and people are being blown to bits, then you find out who stays and you find out who runs. And the 10 who did that need to go. They need to go. And I have no exceptions and no mercy, and I don't want to hear any explanation about it. If you are so gullible that you fall for this, and so easily swayed by the tide, and whatever other motives you may have, out. Goodbye. They all need to be primaried and removed from office. And DCG 44S says it'll be like the Nobel Peace Prize. It's worthless now. Exactly. When you give it to a person who never deserved it, as a gesture, it's a paperweight. Carries no meaning whatsoever. I think I'll do one more. Let's see. Hey, how are you? We're fine. Thank you very much. Okay. Take care. John Galt, CSA. Hey, John, good to see you. Couldn't agree more with your position. This will be the last one, by the way, folks. Couldn't agree with you more that your position that it will take citizen legislators to get us out of the mess we're in. But we mustn't forget the hard lessons we learned in the heyday of the Tea Party. We naively thought we were fighting against the commies on the left without realizing that the worst attacks came from establishment GOP types who couldn't have cared less about the people or the Constitution, only for their own power and enrichment. Care to comment? Yes. I do care to comment. The Tea Party succeeded in its goal of electing Republicans. Remarkably, 2 years after Obama, 1 year after Obamacare, we flipped the House, big time. 2 years later, we gave them the Senate, and 2 years after that, we gave them the presidency. They didn't do anything because they're politicians. And the lesson from the Tea Party is a very clear lesson. And you don't have to look back to 2016. I supported President Trump for the last 4 years pretty much on a daily basis, and I continue to do so. But there's no escaping the fact that for 2 years, we had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and nothing got done. Wall didn't get done. The election integrity, which we've known was going on for a long time, didn't happen. We could have done all of that. We didn't do anything, really, that I can see. And that's on us. So Dennis J. Nelson says Tea Party was the most successful nonviolent political movement in our nation's history. Completely agree. And our new friend DTO the Third says Ryan stabbed us in the back. Yes, he did. It's not. I think I don't mean to split hairs with you or anything. It's not even that he stabbed us in the back, because that implies kind of a change in behavior. He was a politician, and that's what they do. And Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney turned out to be two of the biggest enemies of conservatives that we've seen in the last 20 years. Both of them have been instrumental in hurting the Republican Party. And they were the candidates. They were the team. And we can't afford any politicians anymore, which is why I think this. I'm going to develop this theory. I'm going to keep working on it. I'm going to just keep going with it. Already, people are starting to put together like organizations and websites about this idea. We don't have to do it just yet. We got to flesh it out first. This kind of thing where before we take it out in public, we gotta do an alpha test on it, a beta test on it. We gotta really beat this thing around the edges and find out where the faults are before we make a public reveal. Somebody said trying to come up with names. It's like the one party. No, I don't. And again, I'm just giving you my first impression. The one party is like, we don't want one party rule. And the Patriot Party, which for a moment quickly thinks that's good. If you called yourself the Patriot Party, you'd lock out half of the people that you could get otherwise. I know that's an appalling thing to say, but that's just how the brands are running. That's the world that we live in, and that's the status of the brands that we have right now. If you called it the Patriot Party, people would immediately assume that this is for conservatives and only conservatives, and I'm thinking this is much wider than that. I think that whole idea of those labels, certainly Republican and Democrat don't mean anything anymore. Conservative means something, and progressive means something. We understand what the difference between these two positions are. But anything that brands you to, anything that ties you to an existing brand, if your entire purpose is to rebrand yourself by doing something completely different, then anything that ties you back into the old brands is lessening the effectiveness of what you're trying to do in the first place. I personally like, I kind of like something like the American Citizens Party or something along those lines. I'd like to have American Party, yeah, and even American is getting to be as shameful as it is. Even American carries some baggage with it, but Citizen has a ring to it. All of these terms that we love, the Freedom Party, all of it, those. It pains me to say it, but those things carry baggage. There's already a Citizens Party, okay? Citizens Alliance Party, I thought that's actually a direct one that I thought of. We don't have to come up with it right now. And I actually think that if we're really talking about this doing seriously, I think I'd like to get party out of it, frankly. I think we'd like to get it out of there. I don't think you need it. I think it's pretty clear what it is. So anyway, John, the whole idea turns on not using politicians. Now, I'll tell you one of the immediate problems that we're going to have. There you go. Now that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. Bandit 848 for the win. The after party. That's bloody brilliant. That is bloody brilliant. That's exactly the kind of thing I was looking for. I was trying to think, what's the play we can do on party? The late night party, the killer party? No, the after party. That's fantastic. Fantastic. I love it. That is precisely what I'm looking for. I love it. And the reason I love it is because it includes in it its own joke. It basically is saying what it's basically saying is we are so fresh and different that we're ready to make fun of the entire word party. We're gonna have a play on words with how obsolete the idea of your existing parties are. That's fabulous. Love it. The after party. What is our animal? Phoenix is 2 on the nose. Okay, I'm ready to go home. In the space of 30 seconds, it's all clear to me. Both of them from the comment section. What is the party called? It's called the after party. What is our animal? Our animal is the party animal. Party animal. That's our mascot. It's a party animal. It's brilliant. User, you know who, you win second place for the internet for today. It's called the after party, and our motto, our mascot is the party animal. Yeah, and start. See, this is what happens. This is what genuine synergy is, and this is why I've never worried about all the details of this, because I don't have to think of anything. I just have to put a little ideas out there, and then the hive mind takes over. I'm in favor of what this thing looks like. I think it ought to look like. You know what I think it ought to look like? Somebody said honey badger, and I'm tempted, very tempted, to go with honey badger. But if I, since all this is happening in real time, if it were me and I had to draw it, I would choose my favorite animal. I'm really serious about this. I would choose my favorite animal, which is a raccoon. I would choose a raccoon. I'd choose the trash panda. There's I saw on Dustin's website on Smarter Every Day that he got people to, he tried to make a baseball go supersonic, and he did too. And he said that there's a minor league baseball team that basically produced a bunch of baseballs. And on one side it says he needed some help, financially. One side it says Smarter Every Day, and on the other side it's got the logo for a minor league team called the Trash Pandas, which, if you're unfamiliar with the term, is what you generally call raccoons. I love it, and you know what? I love it for many, 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 many reasons. Many reasons. First of all, raccoons are incredibly smart animals, and they're incredibly cool and cute animals, and everybody loves raccoons. Everybody. And secondly, I would go straight after Rocket from Guardians of the Galaxy. I'd get as close to that as I could without being sued, because I think Rocket Raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy is, in my opinion, by far the best character in the Marvel universe, without question. I think Rocket Raccoon and the voice that is done by, for the love of God. Oh, come on, American Sniper. Here it comes. I always have to wait 4 or 5 seconds. It's on its way. It's on its way. Yes, thank you, Cooper. Mr. Cooper, Bradley Cooper. If I could visualize the attitude of this party, it would be Rocket Raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy. And Omega, I'll get used to it after a while. Omega and Yang 802 says Disney's very uptight about their copyrights. They really are. But they can't copyright a raccoon. They can copyright a drawing of a raccoon. They can probably copyright Rocket Raccoon. I'm sure they can. And you can't get it. You can't copyright a raccoon. Maybe, a raccoon with an AR-15. I'm kind of thinking more like a raccoon with a like a martini glass. And you got to get that party animal after party in there. I love it. I just first impressions, but I love it. And all of the people that are going to say, the great thing about calling it the after party and having our mascot be the party animal is that it will immediately identify for you people who don't get it, who don't get the whole thing. That doesn't mean they're bad people, and it doesn't mean they're on the wrong side. It just means you're going to know instantly. And likewise, the inverse of that is, while a lot of people, a lot of conservatives, and maybe some liberals are going to say, I don't get it, this sounds silly. If you're going to do something serious, give it a serious name. This is ridiculous. No, you know what this is? Calling it the after party and having your mascot be the party animal is putting a Tesla Roadster in the top of your Falcon Heavy rocket. That's what that is. It is absolute genius. It's genius. You just can't improve on it. Another nice thing about raccoons is they're pretty much everywhere. And we have some outside our house, and we've got video of these. They come up to the door and they just put their hands up, and they're just so cute. I love it. I love it. Love it. I may run with that tomorrow for my show. But anyway, congratulations to both of you. Now I have to go back. Would you mind, because the comment section scrolls pretty fast? Could the hive mind just remind me who came up with the after party and who came up with party animal, because I want to credit them. I don't like taking. I figure if I give. This pen is useless. My attitude towards this kind of thing is, if I credit people with great ideas that I didn't come up with, then people are going to assume that anything I didn't credit is an idea that I came up with. So who does anybody remember who came up with After Party? Bandit 848 for the name. Okay. For the name After Party? It's perfect. And user, you know who came up with with Party Animal. It's great. I just love it. I 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 love it. It's just starting to write itself, and that's when I know I'm on the main vein. Is when without even thinking, I'm seeing things, and I'm seeing scenes, and and all the rest of it. And just the idea of a 3D animated raccoon. They can't copyright a 3D animated raccoon. But the idea of one of them with with like a martini glass and just not falling down drunk, just a little bit unsteady on its feet, and it's making. I'm done. I'm doing this right now. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do a tech demo of this. I'm going to do a tech demo of this. It's going to be top priority for me. It's going to be 3D animation. It's going to look a lot like Rocket Raccoon, but it's going to be different enough. It's going to look like a raccoon. It's going to look exactly like a real life raccoon, and I think I'll give him maybe a maybe like a Hawaiian shirt and a martini glass, and then he can just kind of make comments on things like Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden, and we start that brand right now. That's fabulous. That's fabulous. 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 Yeah. Hawaiian shirt, sunglasses up on top of the head there like that. Make him kind of a dick, but not a bad guy. He's not he's not what's the name of the he's not scumbag Steve, but he's also not good guy Greg. He's just kind of in the middle there somewhere. He's got the and he's just a little tipsy. And if we can get somebody to do the voice, a really good voice, then we can spend the next 3 or 4 years just plain. I'm falling down over the idea of this. I'm just falling down over it because you know what this is. I'll tell you what this is. This is the Doolittle raid. This is the Doolittle raid because the idea is serious, and you're not going to win the war with what is essentially a publicity stunt. But this is something that we could get out there within a month, and it's something that you can build the brand of. For this to work, it's going to take good animation. We know how to do that. I know how to do that, and I'm meeting with somebody tomorrow as well. But somebody says get critical drinker for voting. I am so tempted to do that, but he's Scottish and it just won't play. And besides, I don't know him. But what it's going to take is going to take really good animation. It's going to have to be in an interesting kind of a background or a set. But the main thing is going to be the voice has got to be perfect, and it's got to be well written. It's got to be really, really clever and minimal. Minimal. Just what's the smallest thing it can say and still get the point across. I mean, one of these videos ought to be 20-30 seconds long. He's got a couple of lines and they're just hilarious, and then he's gone. And somebody mentioned Alfonso Rachel. That was my first voice. I'm not 100% sure where that voice is going to come from. Yeah, get Maurice. I'll talk to him. User, you know who. I haven't seen my friend Maurice in years. Alfonso might be very, very good. But let me call my buddy Maurice LaMarche, who, as you probably know better as the voice of the Brain in Pinky and the Brain. Yeah, he might be afraid of being blacklisted. I don't know. He was the voice of, is it Infinity, for years. He probably never has to work again. Mobile Moto says, I think I have fleas. I think the party animal has fleas. And this is again, when it writes itself, that's when you know you're onto something. So just off the top of my head, just right off the top of my head, you got him there, and he's got his thing. He says, "So I want to talk for a minute about the political situation in Washington." And it starts scratching. It's like, God damn it! Scratching. I've got this. I'm just covered with these blood-sucking parasites. They don't give a damn about anything except for causing pain and drinking other people's blood and out. You know, it needs a bit more of a setup for that, but you get the idea, right? Boom. I'm on fire. I'm on fire for this. I love this idea, and they can't. You know. Oh, that was cold, but funny. CP Tome said you also need to get an animated ferret that looks like Ben Shapiro chasing around after him, trying to get him to say it better. Now we're all 11th Commandment fans here, but that's just plain funny. That is just really funny. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm very, 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 very excited about this. Very, very, very excited about this. And I've got a meeting with a conservative Unreal animator tomorrow. I love this. I love it. It's like unwrapping a new weapon. You know, it's like somebody's like you're in a lab someplace, or DARPA lab or something. It's exactly like the Dr. Death Mitchell and Webb sketch. If you haven't seen it, I posted them when we were in the heart of our Mitchell and Webb experience streak period here, but there's if you really want to see something hilarious, just go to YouTube and Google Mitchell and Webb, and then look for Dr. Death. It's exactly what it is. Like you see the death ray and the death scorpion and all the rest of it. It's brilliant, brilliant. Hail Vectron. Okay, I think that'll do it. I'm gonna get out on a high note and drive fast and think of Dennis Miller. There's the thought. There's the thought. See, that's the problem with coming up with good ideas in public, and people are saying is afterparty.com available? Let me find out. If anybody is racing me on this, if you could hold on for a second. Let me grab this if I can. I appreciate it. Let's see what we got here. Yes, that is taken by an energy drink. Okay, cool. What about... Come on, baby. That's a Facebook page. Hang on. Give me a second. I'm sorry to have to do that. You know what? I'm just going to do this afterwards. Thanks for joining us. I'll just, no reason for you to watch this. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks to the members who've been here from the beginning, and many of you have been there since the eject days. Thank you for that, and welcome to all of the new members and all of you who made the one-time donation on PayPal. It has fired me up. I'm here every morning. Up at 6. I'm in the studio with a live show, and been editing it down to take an hour or two after that to tighten it up, make that product better, and more stuff on the horizon. And it's all due to the enthusiasm that we've gotten, and just rewired me completely. So thanks again for all of that, and I guess we'll see you next Thursday right here on your very own Stratosphere Lounge. We'll see you.